what is called the threefold miracle that I mentioned earlier, that there was the magnificent Catholic Renaissance, a great rebirth of Catholic life. Second, there was the miracle of political and social reform. And third, there was the miracle of peace, and that Portugal was preserved from the communist terror, and Portugal was preserved from the devastations of the Second World War. And for the bulk of this information, I am relying on Volume 2 of the magnificent trilogy of Frere Michel of the Holy Trinity, The Whole Truth About Fatima. Frere Michel gives many, many details in his book. I'm just giving you a brief overview of what happened. Now, the first in this triple miracle was the miracle of Catholic Renaissance, a great rebirth of Catholic life. Now, this Catholic rebirth was so striking, so dramatic, that even the people who lived through it recognized it and attributed it unquestionably to the work of Our Lady of Fatima. At this time, there was a dramatic increase of priestly and religious vocations. For example, there were only 18 seminarians in the Diocese of Porto Alegre in 1917, but by 1933 there were 201. And diocese after diocese in Portugal tell the same story, growth. The number of priests in Portugal increased at least 25%, and that was up until 1964, until, of course, the Second Vatican Council, when everything started to plummet, as it did throughout the world. As for religious, their numbers almost quadrupled in 10 years, and the same ascending curve was noticed in the number of religious communities in Portugal at the same time. Lastly, there was the great renewal of Christian life, which showed itself in many ways in the development of the Catholic press, Catholic radio, pilgrimages, spiritual retreats, and there was a magnificent movement of Catholic activism that was firmly integrated into diocesan and parish life. There was at this time, there was the association of the Pious Union of Crusaders of Fatima, and this numbered 500,000 members. The people themselves were as fiercely anti-communist as they were devoted to the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And the Catholic Renaissance was so great that in 1942, the bishops of Portugal declared in a collective pastoral letter, they said, anybody who would have closed their eyes 25 years ago and opened them now would no longer recognize Portugal. So vast is the transformation worked by the modest and the invisible factor of the apparitions of the Blessed Virgin at Fatima. Really, Our Lady wishes to save Portugal. So that's the first effect of this 1931 consecration. Magnificent Catholic Renaissance in Portugal. The second great miracle was the miracle of political and social reform. Now, we have to remember that the bishops had consecrated Portugal to Our Lady so that she may save it from communism, which was taking root in Spain right next door. And around 1932, Antonio Salazar came to be premier of Portugal. Salazar, of course, had been rising in government since 1928, and Salazar's goal was to put into practice a Catholic social program that was counter-revolutionary. And Salazar himself received a special blessing from Pius XII, Pope Pius XII, for his work. Pius XII said, "I bless him with all my heart, and I cherish the most ardent desire that he may be able to successfully complete his work of national restoration, both spiritual and morals." Now, as I said, Salazar's program was a Catholic counter-revolutionary program. He called communism the greatest heresy of our time, and he strove with all his might to fight against it. He was a fierce opponent of liberalism, of socialism, and to use his words, he said he was opposed to everything which diminishes, divides, or dissolves the family. He said, for me, I have only one goal. What I plan to do is to make Portugal live normally. And he said, we want to preserve at any price from the tidal wave that is inundating the world, simplicity of life, purity of morals, gentleness of sentiments, the equilibrium of social relations, and the modest but noble family atmosphere which is proper to Portuguese life. So very simply, his goal, excuse me, his goal was to establish a Catholic social order where states and governments and social institutions would base their laws of right and wrong on what the gospel teaches is right and wrong and on what the church teaches is right and wrong. And in this process, Salazar dissolved Freemasonry in 1935.